Then you've got, opposing counsels that their goal is to bill. And so because, again, the bureaucracy of it all, their boss is telling them that they need to earn more money on this case. And so they're filing what I consider to be frivolous things where they could just send me an email and say, hey, could you send over that document? And then you go, sure, not a problem. And it takes 2 seconds. Or they can charge an entire hour for filling out some, ridiculous motion.
Welcome to A Different Practice. I'm your host, Lauren Lester, and I'm obsessed with all things business, well-being, and optimizing the practice of law for solo and small firm lawyers. I started my solo practice right out of law school, built it from the ground up, and now work 4 days a week while earning well over 6 figures. I'm here to share tangible, concrete tips and resources for ditching the legal profession's antiquated approach and building a law practice that optimizes growth and enjoyment. Think of this as grabbing coffee with your work bestie, mixed with all the stuff they didn't teach you in law school about how to run a business. Pull up a seat, grab a cup, and get ready to be encouraged and challenged. This is A Different Practice. In today's episode, we're chatting with Amanda Carey, the founder and managing partner of the Carey Center for Justice, a nonprofit law firm in Illinois dedicated to providing access to justice for those with criminal and family law situations. The Carey Center provides predictable pricing and limited scope options for those who need it most, and just a different way to practice law. Amanda holds a master's degree in communication from Washington State University, a doctorate of education from Northern Illinois University, and a JD from Mitchell Hamline School of Law. She's also currently the co-chair of the Chicago Bar Association's Modern Law Practice Committee. As you'll hear during our conversation, Amanda deeply believes in practicing differently, staying true to her values, and leading from a place of service. All right, let's get started. Amanda, welcome to A Different Practice.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to chat with you today. As a fellow practitioner, I kind of want to get into the weeds and talk all of the details and how business works, because I think the practice you've built is really exciting, and I want to learn more about it. But let's start with how you got here and what brought you to the law.
Well, I think I was, as cheesy as it sounds, I was always meant to be a lawyer. So it's just who I am. I went into a different career path and I had fun doing that for a while, but ultimately I've always been someone that advocated for others, and it got me into trouble a lot of times. And so I think that the law just is well suited to who I am. And so it just kind of makes sense for me. I was in higher education prior to becoming a lawyer, and I stayed for actually a really long time in higher education, and I loved it for a while, but ultimately I knew I was always meant to be a lawyer. I just kind of took a bit of a different path to get there.
Sure, that's all right. I think those are the most interesting paths. And then you, like me, are one of the crazy ones and opened your firm right out of law school. So tell me a little bit about that thought process, kind of what gave you the confidence to do it and why you did it instead of maybe more of the traditional path of working as an associate or working for someone first and then opening your own firm.
Yeah, I mean, probably because of my first career that I felt as though that I could open my own practice. Not that I knew anything more than any other law student coming out of law school knows, but I knew what it was like to work underneath someone, and I knew what it was like to be in a bureaucracy that would kind of hinder what I actually wanted to do with my own firm. And so really the only answer for me was to open my own practice. And I was really lucky that I went to a law school that helped in that area, that wasn't like, hey, you can't do this. And because there's so many people that I run into that open their own practices or even want to open their own practices, and they're like, no, my law school said there is no way I could do that. And it's like, no, I mean, it's not an easy path, but I don't think anything in the law is really an easy path. So it's totally doable, but I had the support too of my law school that I had people there that said, yeah, you can totally do this. It's a hard path, but it's something that can be done.
That's amazing. Yeah, that support really helps. I had the experience of I was looked at sideways. Doesn't that mean you can't get a job? Like, why would you do that? So that's fantastic to hear that there are law schools out there who are supportive of solos and small firms, because at the end of the day, that really is a good chunk of the actual practicing attorneys out in real life. So we should be more supportive of having people go down that path, because we need folks like you out there. So tell me a little bit about the Carey Center and what the mission of your law firm is.
Yeah, so it's kind of twofold. I mean, one is treating clients with respect and dignity when they are in just a very chaotic situation they find themselves in. And I wanted to practice my own way. And part of that is developing a client base that really needed our services, as opposed to people who had more money than they know what to do with and can just kind of say, yeah, go take care of this and go handle it. I always, throughout my entire career, have always wanted to work with people who were less fortunate, who didn't have just a pile of money to fall back on when they experienced situations that were difficult. And so that was really where I wanted to focus my efforts. And then the other side of it is I wanted to open a practice that would give other lawyers a good work life balance, myself included, that I wasn't going to be kind of a churn and burn practice where I would just do a billable hour and work people to death. I just don't think practice is needs to be that way. And so I wanted to kind of set that example along with many of some of my colleagues that this can be done and you can be successful doing it this way.
Absolutely. Now, you set the law firm up as a nonprofit. So I'm really curious as to your thought process there and what benefits there have been for setting it up that way. And then also what challenges, because that's not common, as I'm sure you know, right? So why set up a law firm as a nonprofit?
Well, one of the big benefits for attorneys specifically is the public student loan forgiveness. And just like I want to work with clients who don't have all of these funds, the same thing goes for attorneys. But probably 90% of us are coming out of law school with a ridiculous sum in loans. And a lot of us end up choosing going into practice that we are making a significant amount of money just to be able to pay those loans back. So part of opening this practice was being able to provide that benefit to attorneys so they could forgive their student debt. And with that, I think that I get a lot of questions about why I opened a nonprofit. But I think there's this misconception that a nonprofit means that you don't make any money. And it's really just a different way to tax. That's it. And so it's not really any less complicated than an opening a for profit firm.
And so is all of your revenue directly from client work, or do you do any grant work or take donations? Or really, is it, like you said, just a different tax category that you're in because of that huge benefit of the loan forgiveness?
Yeah, I haven't done any grant work yet. It's on my long list of things to do. I do really want to get into some other kind of pro bono areas and working with grants and providing those services. At this point, we are just focusing on helping clients and making sure that they get specifically what they need for the services that they need. So it's a long-term goal. But yes, I think that's part of the plan.
Oh, that's great. And I think that fits your mission too, of just being able to provide everyday folks with the services that they need. And there are some who need it who really have very limited financial resources. And so to be able to offer a service level to them, that is grant sponsored or whatever would be a nice extension of the firm. So that's fantastic. I love that long-term goal. With your firm, I checked out your website, which I love, but you have on there splayed out from the front that you offer fair and predictable pricing. So I'm curious, what does that mean to you? And then I want to ask you about the different models you have, because I just loved how you laid them out. And for a second, I was like, I might have to steal this because this is really good. But I'm just curious, what does fair and predictable pricing mean to you? And how did you go about determining what that was for your target market?
I think pricing is really difficult. I think you are constantly evaluating your pricing, and it's based on the clients that come to you and what they're able to do. And I think what I love most about this firm is being able to adjust depending on the situation that a client comes with. So I don't think any attorney would say that every client fits into a box. And, when they come to you with a legal situation, what's our patent answer is it depends, right? But we never do that with our pricing. We never say, we always say that it's just, this is what it is, and this is what we're going to do moving forward. But, it depends. It depends on the situation. It depends on what they need. And so we offer a lot of different packages, and we put those on our website just to give people an idea of what it might be. But ultimately, it's after we talk to them and we figure out how much work is involved. Are you looking for a limited scope? Do you just want kind of a buddy there at your hearing to represent you, and then you want to do the rest of the paperwork on your own? Or do you want someone to just look it over for you? Or do you need someone to just take over this case because you are way too busy with your life or with school or whatever else you're doing, and you just want a periodic email as to what's going on? Every situation is different. So I think that's really kind of how we've set up our pricing. As far as it being predictable, I don't understand why we can just say, well, we have no idea how much your divorce is going to cost, or we have no idea how much, it's going to take for you to be able to see your child again. I just think that's terribly unfair. And there's just a better way to do this. And I think we've found a pretty comfortable way.
So your firm focuses on family law and criminal law. So for the family law, you have kind of 3 different tiers, which is do it yourself, some support, and then do it for me, which I just love because I think the client immediately understands what level of service they're getting and how much attorney involvement they're getting. So it's just clear language. It's just so perfect. And then for the most part, those are done on a flat fee, except I saw that the do it for me, you sort of have a flat fee up front and then kind of a subscription, because those are, and I know just from chatting with folks that Illinois, your family cases can go on for years. So it makes sense that you kind of have an ongoing subscription, because that's a big variable for y'all that you just don't know how long it's going to take. But I think that gives the client that kind of predictable, like you said up front, without being like, we don't know, we're the experts, but we have no idea how long this is going to take or what it's going to cost. That really does feel unfair and almost like a lot of gatekeeping on our part, like weird gatekeeping. Like, why can't we just give them a range? So I just love how you set that up. And then criminal law was very similar, some support and do it for me. I appreciated that you didn't have the DIY for the criminal folks. Want to just make sure they know that's not a great route to go. But yeah, I thought that was great. So when a client calls, like you said, I'm assuming there's some sort of consultation. You talk to them, you kind of understand, do they want me to be at court? Do they just want me to do this one document? Do they want me to take it off their plate? How do they respond when you sort of get the level of service they need and then you say, hey, this is what we can do for you. Here's the scope. Here's the cost. What is their reaction to that?
A lot of them, they're very self-aware, because most often people will say, the people that want like kind of this full representation and just for us to do everything for them, they're like, I know me, and I know that I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. And so we stopped talking about limited scope and we stopped talking about kind of just this support model, which is great. And then there's others that are like, I just don't think I have the budget. And you know what? I I can do this on my own. I just want to make sure, I want to double check that I'm doing it right. And so I feel like they're just very self-aware as to what they can handle and what they can't. And then we've also got some clients, some potential clients that call and they say, no, I think I can do it on my own. And inevitably, a lot of those clients end up just converting into full representation anyway, because they're like, oh, not only are they really happy, I think at least they're happy with what our firm has been providing them throughout this kind of limited scope. But also they just kind of get to test the waters and see what it's like working with an attorney. I feel like oftentimes people that come into family law situations, this is the first time they've hired an attorney, the first time they've spoken to an attorney, and their only frame of reference is watching, Law and Order on TV, or I don't know what the latest legal drama is on TV, but that's like their only frame of reference in working with lawyers. So, and that can be really intimidating. So they tend to feel stuff out and then they're like, no, actually, I'm just going to have you do this. And then it works out better that way, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And do you typically collect the fee upfront and hold it in trust when you do the flat fee? And then as it's earned, it gets converted. And then obviously the subscription you get on a monthly basis?
Our fees are earned upon receipt. So I
that's
don't really
right.
even use an IOLTA account. So it works out really well because then I don't need to deal with any of that stuff unless we're selling a house and we need to keep it in trust or something like that. I don't understand any of those things, frankly, that hourly attorneys have to deal with, which is another added bonus.
Yeah, no, I totally forgot about that. You have that lovely rule in Illinois. So then I'm curious because we don't have that in Colorado. We have there, it's not earned upon receipt. It's earned based, at least for flat fees, based on milestones. So I'm curious, what, if any, pushback, or have you ever had a client say, I you didn't deserve it, I want my money back, even though it's earned upon receipt? Because I think that's the big fear of not having that rule across the country is like, well, the attorney's just going to take it and then they're going to not do anything and then just run off with the money, which to me sounds crazy that we're making rules for the lowest common denominator. But I'm curious if you've ever had, not that you've done that, but if you've ever even had a client say, you know what, I'm just not satisfied. Can I have my money back?
Yeah, I mean, especially in Illinois, because we have such these lag times often with divorces. And so when we've got clients paying monthly, we do get, like, if we've got a 2-month lag, they're like, well, what am I paying you for this month? And so oftentimes we just point back to the hearing that we did and the preparation for that hearing. And then we say, okay, so here's all of the work that we did in January. And so you're paying for all of those services, but you're paying for them on an incremental basis. And, not to mention the fact that there's really not a month that goes by that we don't work. We might not be attending a hearing or whatever. We are not specifically addressing something that you can see as tangible, but we are following your case and we are communicating with opposing counsel and we are, managing all of these things at your case so you don't have to. And that is part of what we pay. So we do have to have that conversation with people occasionally. But we also make a point, we are communicating with our clients every single month, regardless of if the case is called or not. And we are trying to communicate with opposing counsel, which creates other issues because they are working hourly. And so they oftentimes don't want to work on a case until it's being called. So, we've got those differences there. But we have those questions. And I've never, knock on wood, never had a client kind of go back and say, wait a minute, you're not doing all of these things and I want my money back. And we just kind of point to those situations and then they go, oh, okay.
You're taking such a proactive approach, like you said. I mean, you're touching base, you're checking in every month because for you, it's not about the time or lack of time. It's doing what's right by the client and making sure things are progressing. And yeah, it's really frustrating when another attorney doesn't have that same approach. And so they're like, why would I be proactive right now? I'm just going to wait until I actually need to do something. But isn't that really hurting that case overall? So it can be tricky when you just have a different approach to practicing law, really. I mean, we're talking about pricing and services, but it really kind of comes down to that core element of just the different approach to practicing and serving clients.
Yes, it very much is. And I had a colleague that explained the difficulty with opposing counsel and just having kind of not really different goals, but just different methods of practice. Our goal is to get the case concluded as quickly as possible and not to charge a client every single month, especially if opposing counsel or opposing party is kind of dragging their feet in a case and not agreeing to anything. And that becomes difficult because our goals are completely separate. Or then you've got, opposing counsels that their goal is to bill. And so because, again, the bureaucracy of it all, their boss is telling them that they need to earn more money on this case. And so they're filing what I consider to be frivolous things where they could just send me an email and say, hey, could you send over that document? And then you go, sure, not a problem. And it takes 2 seconds. Or they can charge an entire hour for filling out some, ridiculous motion. So, those types of things really call to question kind of how we're practicing right now.
And whether we are truly public servants when it's that kind of approach, which I think is where this profession sort of sprung out of. When you're in the weeds of it and you kind of see behind the curtains, you're like, I don't know if this is jiving with what we thought. But, for folks like you out there who are trying to forge the good path, we sure do appreciate it to be an example for all of us. I'm curious how, when you talked about just being proactive with clients and updating them, is there a particular technology that you use to do that? Do you have like a client portal? Is it really just by email or kind of depends on the client? Is there something you use to keep track of that?
So right now we are just using email, phone call. I like to talk to my clients on the phone, and I'm finding that as the firm grows, I'm unable to do that as much as I have before. And so right now I actually am looking into a client portal where we can kind of just communicate immediately with the client as to what's going on. And to a certain extent, the firm can be a little bit more hands off, but can update the portal as to what's going on a more kind of electronic basis. Because face it, family law can be very formulaic. And so kind of inputting those things, as I see it anyway, just kind of inputting those things into a case and saying, all right, this is the next thing to fire, and then this is the next thing to fire. And then the client feels like we are just on top of it and they don't even have to ask a question because we are already like, well, here's why, your opposing party hasn't been served yet. We need to wait 30 days, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. And then so they're just kind of constantly kept abreast to what's going on in their case. And yet we don't really have to do any of that work because, again, we're not hourly. So the more time we save in that, the more clients that we can serve.
Absolutely. And I love that it's not just, which is a great goal, us being more efficient, because at the end of the day, that's good for your bottom line when we bill flat fee. But you started with, it's actually a huge benefit to the client. Like the client gets all of this information, but for us, it's sort of automatic. It really just enhances their experience first and foremost.
Absolutely, it does. And I think that we oftentimes get lost in, I think, the minutia of just practicing law and what we're doing and our lives and a work-life balance and all those other things. But really at the core, I think all of us went to law school to help people. I don't think you're really going to find somebody that are just like, yeah, I thought being a lawyer was just going to be super fun, so here I am. It is to help those clients. And as frustrating as they can be sometimes, understanding where they're at that particular point in their life and counseling them, not just about their legal case, but through this portion of their life, is so very central to what we do. And if we keep that in mind 100% of the time, everything else, in my opinion, everything else falls into place.
Now, I would imagine with that philosophy that you have a ton of referrals from former clients who have had such a great experience. But I'm curious, outside of maybe referrals, is there any particular way you're trying to reach that target market? Any specific marketing tools that you're using or strategies that you've kind of been employing?
Actually, I've done no marketing.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, I feel really lucky to. I've got great colleagues around me who have been in practice much longer than myself, and mentors that have helped me do this. And they send me clients, and then my previous clients will call me and say, "Hey, I have a personal injury case. Would you work on it?" And those types of things. But we have been lucky and haven't really needed to market as much as we needed to kind of tap into technology and kind of get more of those things set up in our practice to be able to take on more cases.
And I think that's a really good point that, when you're starting out or just building the firm, whether it's a year in or 10 years in, I mean, sometimes different focuses of the firms tend to need more of your attention. And I think it's just really important, everyone says, well, you've started, you better, pay for marketing or take ads out. And I like that you're like, you know what, right now, that's not what our focus is. Our focus is on what technology can we build to make our processes better so we can have a better client experience, and then maybe we'll look at marketing if we need to down the road. So I think that's just really refreshing, to be reminded that we don't have to do all 50 things at once at 100 miles an hour.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think I constantly have to remind myself of that because, when you own your own business, you are everything. You're the CEO, the CFO, the receptionist, the everything. And trying to get all of those things done all at once can be really overwhelming sometimes. But I think that I have different ideas at different times. And so I just try to nurture those ideas when they come and not force oh my gosh, I have to work on this right now. Otherwise, everything's going to fall apart. I think that's just not feasible.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just kind of conducive to your health overall. Like you said, one of your, goals with the firm was to have a place that you had happy lawyers working there and that they had a work life, balance and enjoyed working. And I think as the business owner who wears that sort of third hat, that really plays into it as well.
Hmm.
So you have a lot going for you. Like I said, was so excited to chat because I just think that your firm is amazing and what you're doing and building is so wonderful and so needed in the community in Illinois for sure. But just as an example for us in the professions, how would you define success for yourself right now?
Oh man, that's a really loaded question. I think success is, for me, is just being able to support my family, doing what I want to do in my personal life and also in my professional life. I think that throughout my entire career, I have had ups and downs and been able to see kind of very dark sides of things and very light sides of things. And so for me, it's really just about being comfortable and challenging myself on a daily basis and being able to grow and meet new people. And so I think that with that happiness comes success. And I've been very fortunate that this firm has been successful, been able to do the things that I want to do, not only in my personal life, but also in my professional. And I hope to continue to grow it and expand to allowing other attorneys to feel that as well.
It might be a loaded question, but I love asking it because I get answers like, I just want to support my family and be comfortable and be happy, like, is fantastic. And I think the reason that we wanted to have it as the last question for all of our episodes is just to remind folks that it doesn't have to be some pie in the sky. I want a law firm that makes $100 million in revenue and has 700 employees. And if that's someone's goal, like, you do you, and that's amazing. But I think for most of us, when that isn't our goal and what we see out in the public are those big, lofty kind of dreams, and we're like, but I don't know if I really want that. So does that not make me successful? I think it's just so nice and refreshing to hear from folks who are like, I just want to support my family and be comfortable and do stuff I love and do stuff I love personally. Like, that's fantastic. And that's just as important of a goal as the huge lofty ones that we kind of see publicly. It's just really important, I think, that we have more conversations around goals that are normal or not as shiny maybe, but are just as lovely.
Well, I think it goes back to like when we all started law school, it was this, oh, well, everybody needs to go into big law.
Yeah.
And that is where you're going to be successful. Or you need to go into law review, because if you don't go into law review, then you're not going to be able to get a good job after school. And if you're not going to get a good job, then you're just going to like fail as an attorney, right. And you're just never right. going to be able to do this ever in your entire life. And that's what we're fed in law school. And there's so much, and I just don't know with a profession that to me is such a creative profession. I mean, we really have to tap dance with some of the arguments that we come up with from our clients' factual situations. And so to me, it's a very artistic practice. And yet when we go into law school, we are just placed in these boxes. And if you don't fit into the box, you're just never going to be successful. And I just don't buy into that. And I think that a lot of attorneys find after they get out of law school and they start practicing, they realize that that particular path that they were fed is just not right for them. And so the sooner that attorneys really figure out what that path looks like, whether it's opening your own practice or working in a smaller practice or even working in big law, the better off you are.
That's the perfect way to end it. Let's get us out of the boxes and lean into the artistry of practicing law. I love that. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being with us today. This was so fun.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is so nice to hear the stories of practitioners who have committed to building a practice that aligns with their integrity. Amanda has stayed true to the core belief that lawyers are here to serve and to solve a client's problem effectively and efficiently. That's the essence of her firm. I'm sure it's not always easy to stay that course, especially when the winds of certain opposing counsel blow in with their approach of bill, bill, bill. But having that true north, that guiding principle, just makes it a lot easier to course correct when need be. After listening to this episode, I invite you to think about what the essence of your firm is. What's your core belief in how you practice as a lawyer? Where's your lighthouse in the distance that guides you through those storms? If you're up for it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send us a voice memo by using the link at the bottom of the show description wherever you get your podcast. Let's build a community of voices for those who are practicing differently, who have a true north, who are building practices out of integrity. Plus, sharing our stories is just important because you matter and the work you do matters. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep building. I'm over here giving you a virtual high five because you just finished another episode of A Different Practice. For more from this episode, head over to adifferentpractice.com/podcast for show notes and links to resources. If you found this episode helpful, let me know by leaving a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you're looking for even more practical tools to optimize your law practice for growth and enjoyment, be sure to sign up for our monthly newsletter. The link is waiting for you at adifferentpractice.com/subscribe. I can't wait for you to tune in next time. Until then, keep building a different practice.